Well, with the stakes higher than ever and time quickly running out, the characters have to make some really dire decisions in a truly dark episode.
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your sneakers.
Hey guys, it's Kevin with my review for Mr. Robot Season 4, Episode 6, Not Acceptable. And what a perfect title for this episode because, wow, this episode was crazy for sure. And this is what I've been saying for the past few weeks. I mean, just give it time and there's going to be a lot going on. And there was so much happening in this episode. So much to talk about here. So much really did go down. And once again, I have really no idea where we really are headed into the coming weeks. But we're just getting into right now. So let's start off talking about Elliot, and Elliot's arc this week is pretty crazy because he's basically at a point where he's out of time. He knows he's out of time. He knows that the Deus meeting is taking place that night because it's still Christmas Day, and he knows that Deus meeting is taking place that night. He knows that he has to do what he can to, make sure that that goes in his favor. Him and Darlene are trying to plan some things out. But he also knows that he needs that information, and he knows that Olivia was someone that he was hacking, and what he ends up doing in this episode is maybe the most morally unethical thing he's done the entire show, yet we are still kind of behind him in that way, and that just shows you how great of a character Elliot really is. That's why you're not going to see tons of think pieces and things like that and articles coming out, talking about how, Mr. Robot's problematic and Mr. Robot is glorifying suicide. And no, that's not the case at all. In fact, a big part of this episode is really questioning the morality of Elliot and how he's had to do some things that are very unjust. And this is something that Mr. Robot is very much starting to recognize. And I thought Mr. Robot's narration this week was probably the strongest it's been so far because he's really tapping into this idea that though him and Elliot, they've been doing things for a good cause, they have hurt a lot of people along the way, but I don't think anyone has been hurt in the way that Olivia was in this episode, because Elliot straight up tells her right off the bat that, yeah, I've been hacking you. This has all been just part of a plan. You're just another cog in the system to me, and basically he gives her this ultimatum where, you're going to make this call to your job, you're going to ask them for the information that I need, or I'm going to, threaten you, ruin your custody battle. I'm going to tell them that you're using Oxy again, literally drugged her. So if she says no, then he can, possibly ruin her life. And this was so hard to watch. And again, that Mr. Robot's such a great show when you really can see the perspectives of both of these people. For Elliot, he really has no choice at this point. This is a last-ditch effort. He did not want to have to do this to Olivia, but he's at a point where he doesn't know what else he can do. And while a part of me does wish that we would have seen more of Elliot and Olivia, so that way this would have hit even harder, I think just seeing Olivia's reaction really made up for that because Olivia is a hapless victim in this way. We already know that she's using. We already knew she's getting, she is getting over the death of her mother and things like that. We know that she's blamed herself for her mother's death. We know she's had this custody battle, but we also know that she has been clean. She's been trying to get over her drug addiction, but she also feels she doesn't have much of a reason to live anymore. So she's very complex in that way. And I think it speaks volumes for how great the show is with character that we've only seen an episode and a half of this character, and yet we still really do care for her in that way. Not just because she's a victim, but we understand who she is. We understand what she's had to deal with, and we also understand why this is the one thing she doesn't need right now. And we see how this really does break her in that way. And while Elliot, basically claims that he is going to help her and that he's going to try to erase her from the Deus group entirely, even confessing to her that the Deus group killed her mother and things like that, you can see how hurt Olivia was by this because I think she genuinely did care about Elliot. I think she saw Elliot as someone that she could get close to, someone that could help her from this, but We knew it was a matter of time before he was going to ruin it, and he already has, and it's just devastating to watch. So when he's, asking her to call, but also just straight up threatening her, it's just really hard to watch. But again, it never goes in a direction where it feels like the show is crossing a line. Elliot, yeah, is very much crossing a line, and again, that's something that we really do explore here, especially when Olivia tells him that, like, he's hurt people as well, even though he's trying to, save, he's trying to go after a corporation that's hurt people. He's also very much hurt people. Even stemming back to the victim of the whole attack, the whole hack of Steel Mountain. I mean, that guy was innocent. They needed to, do what they can to hack into him so they can get into Steel Mountain, but that guy was in fact innocent. It just goes back to the idea of this show that, like, Elliot started out wanting to take down this huge corporation, but he had to do a lot of things that were crossing the line. And what did it cost him? His entire team. His entire team that he had in season 1 is dead, mainly because of him. It's not because of something that they did wrong. It's all because of him. And this really does show that Elliot, even though, yes, we are rooting for him, he very much is an anti-hero. He's very much going in that direction. I think he's always been going that direction, but it's never been more readily apparent that he is than this episode. And I think they did a really good job with showing that even though we understand where Elliot's coming from, we're not necessarily on his side. And I think that's a really interesting idea, and that end narration that Mr. Robot has, where he talks about how, Elliot is hurting people and he's starting to see, just how morally unethical he's being, I think is a really interesting idea, and I really did like the way they tapped into it. But then, the scene where he basically tells Olivia that, them having sex and them, getting close, that was all just an accident. You can just see the genuine sorrow in her. She was hoping that he could say that he cared about her, and I do think Elliot does care about her. I do think that he wanted to help her in the way. He didn't want to have to hurt her, and we understand that, but at this point, he is very much out of options in that way. But we also know that Olivia, again, really did care for Elliot, and so the reason when the moment where she goes in and we see that she slit her wrists was just devastating to watch, because we already knew that she does this on a daily basis, but she was generally hoping to kill herself here. She knew exactly what she had gotten herself involved in. She felt destroyed. And what Olivia says to him really resonated with me, with her saying that, there are a lot of evil people in this world, and you are also evil, especially because you don't realize you are. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, Elliot, I think he does know what he's doing is wrong, but he also sees it as, this is the only way, where, truthfully, yes, this might have been the only way, but at the same time, he has destroyed her life, and there's no coming back from that. And that's what's going to be so tragic about this. Like, I feel like even if Elliot does win, which I feel like at this point there's a very slim chance that might happen, I don't think everything's going to be great for him. He's destroyed a lot of people, and I like the way this season is really focusing on that, especially with someone like Olivia. Even characters like Angela or Terrell, were kind of destroyed because of Elliot. And, yeah, obviously White Rose was a big part of it, and the whole Dark Army and things like that, but Elliot still was a big part of it, and we definitely are getting to see basically the ramifications of that throughout the season. And I think it's all exhibited by what Olivia said. Yes, he does have people like, say, Leon, for example, which I really did like seeing Leon again, where Leon told him, hey, if you need me, I'm going to come help you. I think we're definitely going to see more of him in the back half of the season for sure. But this episode really did show that though we're supposed to root for Elliot, he's definitely not the best person. He's made a lot of bad decisions because of it, not just because of his, social disorder, where he doesn't feel a lot of, remorse for what he did, because we know he definitely does feel remorse. I mean, we saw how he reacted when Trenton and Mobley were killed last season. He took great, but he definitely took a great amount of guilt for it, and he really did feel like he was, the person that was most responsible for it. He really held himself accountable for that, and we definitely saw that for sure, but we also see that he's had to do a lot of things that is destroying people's lives. And I like the fact that Mr. Robot is trying to reel him in, telling him, hey, maybe we're going a little too far. Maybe we need to stop doing this. And the moment where, he gets that call from Krista, and even though you know that what's going on there, which, trust me, I'll get into that, you can see that Mr. Robot is wanting to back off at this point. He knows how far they're truly going, and he doesn't really know if he wants to do this anymore. And it just makes me worried that Elliot isn't going to save the day here. It makes me worried that Elliot is going to fail miserably here, and things are just not going to work out for him very much at all. But I guess we'll just have to see the way that turns out. But the ending of this episode, with Elliot being captured by all of Vera's guards, I'll get more into that in a little bit. But like I said, I really like the way this episode explored the complexities of Elliot, explored how he's done a lot of things that aren't right, but also showing why he's doing them. It just really shows how great of a character Elliot really is, and I think they did some excellent work with that in this episode. But now getting into the Vera stuff, like I said, I've made it clear this season I've not really been a fan of this. I thought it was a cool idea to bring Vera back at first, but at this point, all he's amounted to is what I had feared. He just feels very secondary. He feels like he's just this obstacle in the way of things, and never more so than this episode. I mean, this entire episode, he's captured Krista. He's like monologuing about how she called him a bitch or something like that, telling the story that I honestly really couldn't follow at all because he just kept like pontificating about shit. But he's basically trying to get to her. He's trying to get her to open up, and she eventually does. She talks about, starts off just talking about Elliot's insomnia and things like that, but then eventually goes on to talk about, all the things that Elliot's been through, all the sessions they've had, and then lets him in about Mr. Robot and how that is going to be the thing that does end up destroying him. And this is when she does make the call to basically alert Elliot that she's been kidnapped or whatever, but this is also how Vera is able to lure Elliot in, who, again, in his mind, he is working with Elliot, and he's, like, recruiting him for something, but it's pretty clear that what he's doing is capturing him. I think he has some very dark plan there, so again, still not too crazy about this. I hope it's going somewhere interesting. I still believe that this is going somewhere that we don't know of, and I hope that is the case, because still, they have yet to convince me that this has any relevancy in the season whatsoever. This really just feels like something that is setting Elliot back from achieving this goal of, trying to make sure the Deus group goes in his favor, because he got what he wanted out of Olivia. Like, she did make that call and things like that. It just didn't, he just felt way more sorrow for it than he did, because he still did get what he wanted from Olivia and things like that, but this is the thing that is going to possibly set him back. We'll have to see where this goes next week, but again, still not entirely convinced this even needed to be here, unfortunately. But easily my favorite stuff in this episode, besides the Elliot stuff, has to be the subplot with Dom and Darlene, which this was all kinds of thrilling. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat throughout this entire thing. The moment that Dom walked in, the moment that Darlene felt that there was someone else in the house and that she wasn't safe, I was like, oh fuck, I don't know what's going to happen here. This entire episode, though, I was so worried that something was going to happen to Dom or something bad was going to happen to Darlene. It just underscores just how great these two characters are, because no one really is in the wrong here. Dom is not in the wrong because we know what Janice is capable of. We know that Janice is willing to kill her entire family. Hell, she literally says when Dom's about to chicken out, she's like, all right, if you're not going to do this, just let me know so I can make plans to kill your mother and all of them tonight. And you can just see that she means business. She's not fucking around this time, and Dom knows that. Dom knows that what the Dark Army is capable of. She knows that they killed Santiago, so she's going to do everything that she can to make sure that her family is safe. And if that means having to kill Darlene, then she'll have to do it. But we knew that she was not going to do it. We knew that there was no way that Dom was actually going to kill Darlene. I thought for a split second she was going to, but the second that she threw into that bathtub and, Darlene is really talking about how sorry she feels for what she did, you can see that Dom isn't going to do that because she is a good person. She doesn't want to have to hurt people, but she knows that she has to. And Dom feels so bad about this that she actually begs Darlene to kill her, which was incredibly shocking. I was not expecting them to go in that direction at all. And I knew Darlene wasn't actually going to kill her, but just the idea of Dom getting to this point, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Dom's at a point right now where she's just constantly on edge. She's constantly paranoid. You know, she's got the Dark Army up her ass, which she really doesn't want at all. Her entire reputation has been ruined at this point. I mean, she just wants out of this situation, and the only way that she can do that might be just to sacrifice herself. And it kind of makes me worried that that's how Dom is going to end here. I honestly don't see, and I know I've said this before, that Dom is not safe, but I think this episode confirms that I do not see a version of the show ending with Dom alive and well. I think she's going to be shooken from this. I think she's never going to be the same again. And I do think she's going to end up killing herself. And I know it's going to be a very bleak end for that character, but considering what we saw in this episode, I don't really see where else Dom goes at this point other than just taking her own life. And it's going to be tragic because we know that Dom is someone that has always had a hard time opening up to people, has always had a hard time, you know, just doing something. We know how pathetic her social life is and things like that. I mean, the most connection she's had besides Darlene is some unknown person on a computer screen, you know, just some unknown presence that she's talking to, and she doesn't even know who they are, if they're who they say they are or not. And we know that Dom herself isn't even attracted to guys anymore. So again, it's very tragic if it would end that way, but I think in this episode I don't really see how else this ends at this point. And it's tragic, but I kind of see it going that way. And it's definitely going to be an interesting direction for sure, because the way things end with Janice confronting them, she says straight up she's not going to kill Dom. She has something else in store for them, and I don't know what it's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be them torturing Darlene or something like that, but I am not excited to see what that's going to be. That's going to be devastating to watch for sure. But we also do get a note in this episode that the Dark Army has a different plan for Elliot than expected. They actually aren't going to plan to kill him, because White Rose believes that Elliot and her have a common goal and that they are very similar in that way. And the thing is, she's not really wrong about that, because we've already seen that Elliot and White Rose are two people that will do everything in their power to make sure things go in their way. And while they have two very different goals, Elliot's goal is to bring down this corporation for everything that they've done, you know, finally take control of his life, finally, you know, just fix everything in that way and undo this hack. You know, we know the White Rose's goal clearly is to build this device, and everything that she's done has been to make sure that this device goes in the way that she wants to. And she, you know, wields out the people that are of no use to her, but she keeps in the ones that are in fact valuable to her. So they actually do have a lot of similarities in that way. And I think that's a very interesting idea, is to, because we've seen White Rose and Elliot interact, but never face to face. They had a few moments, like in season 1, when Elliot didn't know what she was fully capable of. But it's all really been leading up to those two, you know, that confrontation. I don't think that confrontation is going to happen for a little bit. I think there's still going to be a good amount of time before we get there. But knowing that White Rose doesn't intend on killing Elliot yet, I'm very excited to see where that ends up going, because I think that's a very interesting idea for sure. But I do think that that definitely gives Darlene a very, very dire fate. I do not see things going well for her really at all at this point. I think that at this point they're gonna sacrifice Darlene just so Dom can, you know, do what they want her to do. They know the connection she has to Darlene, and if Dom isn't willing to pull this off, then they might just off Darlene right then and there. I mean, I honestly don't know how this is gonna go, but I can't see it going well. I can't see it going well. Knowing what the Dark Army is capable of, knowing that Dom did not perform this task in the way that she was advised to, I just do not see this going well at all. But like I said, this subplot for me, it was so well done. It was so intense in that way. But again, really showed the connection that Dom and Darlene have. That even though Darlene did destroy Dom's life, she can't bring herself to kill someone. She can think about it, she can say she's going to do it, but she can't actually do it because she has that moral high ground. She has that moral compass where she just can't do that here. She, out of everyone, I'd say, is probably the most morally right character in this show. She constantly has taken, the safest route possible just because she is a good person in that way. And Darlene also is a good person. Even though she's had to do some things that aren't great, she's done them because of her brother. And that's the thing that works so well about this subplot, is that there was no one that was on the wrong side of things. Dom is someone who has been forced into this situation. She didn't get to make a choice there. Darlene is someone who is finally starting to, compose herself a bit. She's been lost for a lot of this season, but she's finally starting to get on the right path, and I think that whatever Janice has planned for them, is just going to kill all of that immediately, and I don't think, whatever it's going to be planned, I don't think they're ever going to be the same after this. I think it's going to alter them significantly, and I don't really know where it's going to go, but I'm increasingly terrified for whatever that plan is, because it can't possibly be good. But like I said, I adored everything about the subplot. I thought it was so well done, and I think they did some excellent stuff there. I will say this episode had some really great cinematography as well, especially the shot with him and him trying to comfort Olivia after she slit her wrists. I mean, it was a really devastating shot, but I think really just shows the craft put into this show for sure, and I really love the way that was done, with us kind of like looking down on it, and also the opening shot with Vera monologuing, and then we slowly see Krista tied up. I mean, just genius stuff there overall, and then everything with Dom and Darlene. I love it was all in like this one location in this apartment, but most of it took place in like this bathroom, and we really didn't know the way that was going to go down, and it was just some really great shots throughout this entire episode. And again, that's nothing new for Mr. Robot, but it's just a technique that I continue to see perfected, and something that I just really do adore about this show, and I think they always do nail it for sure. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to talk about moving forward. Like I said, even though yes, we have a clear path of where things are going, I'm pretty sure this Vera stuff will hopefully be done by next week's episode, because they're heavily promoting it as like something game changing, and I hope it gives it more of a purpose. Again, I don't want to say that like the Vera subplot is a problem this season, because again, truthfully, we still don't know where that's headed. We still don't know what he said to Elliot at the doorway, when that third personality reacted. We still don't know what that was all about. So I do believe there is more going on here that we don't know about, but I still do contend that it feels very secondary. It doesn't feel like it's a main part of this season. It just feels like it's something else that's kind of thrown in there just to give Elliot this extra obstacle. And I don't really know if it's going in a direction I love, but I guess we'll have to see. We'll just have to see where that goes next week. But aside from that, I mean, everything else is just really revving up in terms of tension. I mean, the stuff with Dom and Darlene, I'm so worried about where that's headed moving forward. Everything with Olivia, I mean, Elliot has completely destroyed this girl at this point, and you can see that while he does feel bad for her, he doesn't really feel like he had a choice. He needed to double cross her in that way, and it's very saddening to see for sure the way that's gone. And again, Olivia could have been so great for Elliot. I was really hoping that Olivia could have been the person that, maybe helps him out, but unfortunately that's not where they're going at all, and I just think things are going in a very, very bleak direction for sure. I just don't see things ending in a very uplifting way, and it's sad to say for sure, but I don't think things are going in a very happy direction. I shouldn't be surprised considering this is Mr. Robot, but considering where things are headed, I don't see things playing out well for the rest of the season. That's a good thing. Like, don't think that's a negative on like the season. Like that, I want to see things escalate in that way, and I think it would be the right way for the show to end if it ends in a very dark and bleak way, but it's going to be very hard to watch for sure. So yeah, I really did adore this episode. There's a lot to really love here. We're really leading up to that Deus meeting quite well, but I'm also very excited excited to see where Elliot and White Rose end up going, because like I said, White Rose feels like she has this connection to Elliot and that they're very similar in that way, and I want to see exactly what her plan is, because we still don't know what that device she's building is, and I think that's for a reason. I think we don't know because Elliot also doesn't know, and I think maybe that involves Elliot somehow. I mean, I guess we'll really just have to see where that ends up going moving forward, but either way, this was another fantastic episode. And I'm definitely going to give Mr. Robot Season 4, Episode 6, not acceptable overall, in A-. But over, guys, to my review of this episode of Mr. Robot. Let me know what you guys saw this episode overall. Left your thoughts on it. Like I said, I told you guys I'd put this one out earlier, and I did. So hopefully that's the case moving forward. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.